Start all over again. Welcome and good morning. We are at order today in the committee. We're looking at the unique energy challenges that face those of us who live in the remote and isolated areas that are not connected to our national grid. This is Alaska, this is Hawaii, this is our territories. These areas are largely dependent on imported diesel fuel for their energy needs. The cost of importing that fuel adds significantly to the overall cost of electricity, and in the case of Alaska, it also adds to the cost of space heat. Most remote locations pay at least twice the national average for electricity. In parts of my state, we see rates that are at times 10 times the national average as a result of the need to import fuel. So when we talk about energy challenges, for us, this is every bit as important as anything else that we face. And Alaska, of course, is not alone in this. In our isolated areas, in our islands that are reliant on imported energy, this is probably the most debilitating aspect of our ability to have an economy at all. While the nation's regional grids have a diverse set of energy sources to draw from, most isolated areas simply do not have that luxury. Instead, their energy costs are directly tied to the price of oil. Lower prices are providing some relief right now, but energy source diversity is the best and most stable option over the long term. In many parts of our state, the fuel barge comes in once a year, twice a year maybe. Sometimes it doesn't come when you expect it because you can't get the barges up the river. But effectively what happens is the communities are locked into the price of fuel at the time that it was contracted. So if you contract for the fuel in July and the prices are reasonable, you enjoy those reasonable prices for until the next shipment comes, which may be a year later. I asked this morning to see what the people in Bethel paid last year in, let's see, this would have been in summer of 13, and heating fuel was going for $6.09. Diesel was going for $6.51. Gas at $6.85. Then in October of 14, we were looking at heating oil at $6.20, diesel at $6.82, gas at $6.79. Well, then what happens? We see the low prices around the country. Everyone was benefiting from the low prices, not so much for those of us in Alaska. We're still seeing price comparisons that simply don't add up. It's important that we look at remote and isolated energy systems in a holistic manner, not just from a cents per kilowatt hour perspective. In all but a few of the communities served by remote energy systems, economies of scale are simply not a reality. Further, the isolated nature of these energy systems means that they must bear the entire burden of ensuring reliability within the community. And the ability to support these energy systems directly depends on the underlying economy, and at the same time, the cost of energy drives that economy. I was in Pelican over the 4th of July break. Pelican, Alaska is down in the southeastern part of the state, very small community, about 100 so people. It's only accessible by boat or by float plane. It was founded as a commercial fishing processing site back in the mid-30s. It processed 1 million pounds of fish back in 1942. But over the years, they have languished as the fish went elsewhere, and they went elsewhere for some pretty simple reasons. Ice. If you don't have ice to keep your fish chilled after you have harvested them, you don't have a product. Making ice takes energy, and without competitive energy, the community couldn't provide the ice necessary to support quality-based fisheries. But the good news for Pelican is that they have a small hydro project that has Pelican back on the map, processing small bits of fish that are coming in, but the fish are no longer going by this community, and it is in part due to the fact that they have energy to the school, to the water plant, and now to the fish processors there. But Pelican, in my mind, is an example of how we need to think about energy in these systems. We need to focus on solutions to the problems at hand, where energy sources match what the community needs and what the community can sustain, and not simply what is desired for them. From a federal perspective, we must ensure that our programs do not leave these areas on the sidelines. I note that the DOE's definition of a microgrid requires the microgrid to be able to disconnect and connect to a larger grid. Well, that's just not possible for those of us in the non-contiguous parts of the United States. We have legislation before the committee, S 1227, to ensure that the development of microgrid technologies includes isolated communities, and hopefully that will become part of our larger energy package. Finally, I would note that this hearing occurs at the same time the Pacific Power Association, which is the umbrella organization for the power companies in the Pacific Islands, including those in the U.S. territories and freely associated states, is holding its 24th annual conference in the Marshall Islands. That's a coincidence, not a matter of coordination, but it is good to know that the issue of remote and isolated energy systems will be highlighted across the globe this week. The issues associated with islanded energy systems deserve our attention. Energy can be a staggering cost and a staggering burden for the people who live in these areas, so I'm pleased that we've set time this morning to explore what can be done at the federal level to help find lower cost solutions to them.